You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
Welcome back in. Zach Gelb Show. Time right now in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios, 420. Thursday night football tomorrow night. Big Blue and the EAGLES Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field. Giants look to punch their ticket to the postseason. And if you're an Eagles fan, you're just counting down the days and hoping that Carson Wentz ends up getting protected in these final two games, as this year has been a bit of a disappointment the way that it started. But when you take a look at the end record, that's what people expected before this season did begin. And now joining us, does a great job for the New York Daily News, made the switch from hockey to the NFL, and now he does a great job covering the Giants, and that's Pat Leonard, who joins us right now. Pat, Zach Gelb, appreciate a few minutes, and how are you?
Zach, very well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. So when I take a look at this game and you see the Eagles offense, they struggle running the football. Giants do a very good job defending the run. So it's going to come down, in my opinion, I think the Giants are a better team, how the Giants will end up defending Carson Wentz. And I take a look at that Giants defensive line, and I know they're a very exceptional unit, one of the better ones in the league. Just how about this battle, Giants defensive line versus the Birds offensive line that gets back Lane Johnson this week?
Yeah, exactly. Even though the Giants are missing Jason Pierre-Paul, Romeo Okwara, the undrafted rookie out of Notre Dame, has done well in his place. Had a great debut 2 weeks ago. Not as stellar of a performance last week, but the defense and he included Kerry Wynn rotating in, played very well. Olivier Vernon has been an absolute monster, signed as a free agent out of Miami, or off the Dolphins, rather. And he was hurt, a wrist injury earlier in the season for the first half of the year, but the healthier he got, the better he became this season, not just in the pass rush that's improved lately, but as a run stopper. And then you have Snacks and Jonathan Hankins in the middle. And I wrote this today. I think that Fletcher Cox making the Pro Bowl over Damon Harrison is unbelievable, is a ridiculous snub. Both big money tackles, both hugely important to their defenses. But the Eagles are giving up well over 4 yards a carry, 20 in the league. I believe the Giants are only giving up 3.6 per carry, which is top 10. And Harrison, even though he doesn't have the 6.5 sacks, he only has 1.5, so maybe that's what people are looking at. But I think he's had a much better year than Cox, and maybe one of the best years of any defensive tackle in the league.
Yeah, I was very surprised when Snacks Harrison didn't get named to the Pro Bowl just because of the year that he's having. You take a look at this Giants defense, Pat. Going in before the year started, everyone thought, the offense was going to be the strength of this team, and it's been the defense. Why do you think so many people missed that this defense was going to be this good?
Well, I think Janoris Jenkins has been totally lights out. And also, when you sign big free agents to beef up a defense, maybe for a quick playoff or Super Bowl run like the Giants were trying here, there isn't a great history of it working in the NFL. The Philadelphia Eagles can tell everyone about the dream team they assembled through free agency and how that worked out. And I think everyone knew that the Giants were getting good players in signing Jenkins, Harrison, and Vernon, but all three have had stellar seasons in their own ways. Jenkins, in my mind, has been the best player on the defense. Eli Apple, even though everyone, including myself, thought that Jerry Reese should have drafted an offensive lineman in the first round, Eli Apple, who he took instead, the corner out of Ohio State, has really been strong, has shined, has bounced back when he hasn't made great plays. I also think that the Steelers were able to attack that second level. Sometimes the linebackers and the tackling in space can be an issue, but I don't think the Giants have let enough people get to that part of the game, and I think they're just frustrating people, and I don't think anyone thought that they could be like a top five considered in the conversation for best defenses, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Ben McAdoo probably happy with the stats for losers line, taking a look, the Giants are the 15th ranked defense in the league, but playing a whole lot better than that. And you take a look at that secondary, it's been an exceptional unit, maybe the best secondary in the league. I know Janoris Jenkins is questionable for tomorrow night. Do you expect him to play? And if not, I would have to imagine still that Giants secondary will be okay against these Eagles wide receivers that just quite frankly aren't that strong.
Yeah, I don't expect Jenkins to play. I mean, even though the test came back negative, so in a good way, the vital organs were tested and everything came back okay. But to me, that's very serious. injury, even if you come back okay. The fact that they had to check that would lead me to believe that they would sit him for a week. Now, that's not definite, but just that it's a short week, especially. Jonathan Casillas, the linebacker and the captain of the defense, is also questionable with a knee. I'm not sure what his status will be. Again, the early game in the week could change that. But Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, who had a good start to the season, midway through he was struggling a little bit, and they've kept snaps down when they can. But especially in Pittsburgh, I thought his tackling and pursuit of the ball was horrific. But last week against Detroit, he stepped in when Jenkins went down. They had Apple on the other side. And then they have guys like Trevin Wade, Cody Sensabaugh. Leon Hall has been more at safety. But they've got some depth back there is the point. DRC, perennially a starter for this team. Now it's a luxury to have a guy like him step up. And like you said, the Eagles don't have a stellar wide receiver core, so maybe that hurts the Giants a little less.
Yeah, Pat Leonard with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Pat, I read your article today about that, saying, if the Giants clinch things up, that it would behoove them to sit Odell Beckham Jr. next week against the Redskins. Just tell my audience why you feel so passionately about that.
Well, I just believe that. So there's different scenarios, of course. Like if the Giants win and the Cowboys lose Monday night to the Lions, then there's no way you can sit Beckham in Week 17 because the NFC East title is still up in the air, so you're looking for a win and another Cowboys loss. But there are scenarios this week, not only would the Giants clinch, but they could actually seal themselves into the 5 seed and nothing else if the Cowboys win and beat Detroit, clinch the NFC East on Monday. So to think that the Giants could come out of Week 16 knowing that they are the 5 seed, knowing they're in the playoffs for the first time in 5 years, to me, the only thing remaining is the potential of not only for Beckham or a player to get injured in Week 17 playing that game, but Josh Norman and Beckham and their history. And, I mean, look at Washington's season. They are slinking out of the playoffs, a really disappointing year. We all know Norman's history, the fact that he has tiffs with numerous players, Des Bryant, Odell Beckham, the list goes on. And if I know him and I know his game, he's not only going to try to get under Odell Beckham's skin, but think about it. The last time he was a Carolina Panther last year, Beckham gets suspended a game for flipping out, and he misses the game in Minnesota. Now it turns out to be not that important regular season game in Minnesota. Well, if you're Tom Coughlin, but not a playoff game. But in this case, if he were to get suspended for one game, it could cost the Giants their season. I just don't think it would be worth the risk. And I'm curious to see if that's how they proceed, because I really would love to, if that scenario occurs, I don't see the argument for playing Beckham in that game.
Well, here's my question, just following it up, and I think it makes 110%. Like, let's just assume Dallas wins this week and the Giants win. The Giants know their fate, so it makes no sense to play Beckham, just knowing how much of an imperative player he is for that team. The offense goes only through him in the last few weeks. Do you think Odell, with his ego, would let them sit him, just knowing what's at stake and how it's perceived, that rivalry with him going up against Norman?
No, that's a good question. I mean, I think that he would fight it, behind the scenes. I think he would say, I want to be out there. I'm a competitor. And I wouldn't expect anything less of any player, really. I would be upset if a player didn't react that way. And I think he will go to, if that does happen, I would think Beckham would go to great lengths to point out that this was not his idea and that he would much rather play in the game, because the last thing he wants is Norman and people mouthing off that he was too chicken or whatever it is to play against him. But look, the goal is the Super Bowl, and the Giants are not afraid of talking about that. McAdoo said it on the first day of training camp, and the players are talking about it now. And even though Beckham, he is that competitor, he has that high level of intensity, and there's no way he would enjoy doing it. I do think it would be the prudent thing for the coaches and even management to discuss going into that game. And I do think, knowing that this team has a chance and knowing that he's never been to the playoffs before as an NFL player, I think that would be what would convince Odell Beckham finally to suck it up and say, well, look, I'm going to play a much more important game next week, and it's worth it.
Pat, how do they get more than Odell Beckham? How do they get more out of this offense? Because that's been a concern for this team. And you mentioned the Super Bowl. If they want to get to that Super Bowl this year, and it's definitely possible because you don't have a lot of strong teams in this league, and the Giants are one of those teams that are going to be in the running. How do they get more out of this offense other than just Odell Beckham?
Well, it's been encouraging the last few weeks to see not only Paul Perkins, the rookie running back out of UCLA, getting more snaps, but the reason he's getting more snaps is now he's been showing that he's an exciting runner and more productive than Rashad Jennings down to down. But Jennings was a much better pass protector, knew the playbook well a lot better, and now though you're seeing Perkins picking up blitzes a little better, and his snaps are increasing because of it. I think that is an exciting, encouraging sign if you're a Giants fan. I do think, though, McAdoo also, at the beginning of the game last week against Detroit, that first drive, it was encouraging to see him. They come out in double tight ends, but then a couple plays later, they go to three wide. They were rotating receivers. They had Victor Cruz finally in the slot for a couple plays, something they really haven't done all year, which doesn't make any sense. I think they've been too predictable, so I think that falls on the head coach. But look, they at personnel, as far as tight end, as far as running back, and at points on the offensive line, and even if you want to talk about Cruz, that even though he's healthy, he's not necessarily getting the kind of separation they need, and that Shepard isn't always open in the slot, even though he's an encouraging and exciting player. I think there's just a lot that Eli Manning doesn't have to work with. So he's trying to manage with one hand but tied behind his back, so to speak, in some ways. And also, look at this, though. The one job the offense doesn't have or has down the stretch is not turn the ball over. Now, I totally agree that they need to improve, and if they don't improve, they're going to lose a game here because they can't score more than 10 or 17 points. But as long as they don't turn the ball over and then Brad Wing keeps punting the way he does, then they make a team and offense go a full field against their D. And week in and week out now, it seems that opposing offenses cannot do that, certainly without any regularity. So the number one thing is Eli Manning has to continue not turning the ball over, because that's been a problem earlier this year. Other than that, my answer would be that if Paul Perkins, the more he becomes a part of the game, the better it is for them.
Since you mentioned the punter, and I hate the Pro Bowl, I'm not a big fan of the Pro Bowl, but I thought he got snubbed. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I do think Snacks is the biggest snub, but I agree. Brad Wing has had a fantastic year, and hey, look, an incredible stat. He has punted the third most of any NFL punter in the league. The only two ahead of him are the Niners punter on a team that's 1-13, and the Rams punter on a team that fired its head coach. So your offense has to be pretty bad. Your offense has to be pretty bad for you to get that much work. But that's not just to discredit Wing's work. He has been fantastic, especially lately. But hey, more practice the better, right?
Yeah, but no doubt about that, I guess. Pat Leonard, before we let you run from the New York Daily News, because I know you got to go, prediction for this game. What type of game do you expect coming up tomorrow night?
I do think the game is going to be closer than people might think, just because, look, it's on the road. It'll be hostile. It'll be loud, even though the Eagles season hasn't gone the way they want it to. There is an unlikely scenario where the Giants can't get in, or they could at least do some damage and prevent them from winning the division if that's what they want to do. It's going to be hostile, and the Giants are going to have just as much trouble scoring, I think, as they have week in and week out now. We come to expect it. I do think that it'll be close. I did pick the Eagles to cover on a 3-point spread with the Giants favored going in, but I do think the Giants win the game. I think they'll force a turnover. Wentz has thrown some interceptions as the offense has come apart a little bit for Philly. I know Sproles comes back, Lane Johnson, but I do think there will be a key turnover maybe that Wentz commits that leads to the Giants' victory. And also, I'm just not encouraged necessarily by all of Doug Peterson's in-game calls. Not to say that Ben McAdoo is a world beater in-game coach either, but Peterson hasn't proven to me yet that he's that guy. So I'm taking the Giants in a close one.
Pat, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Zach. Take care.
You too. Appreciate it. There's Pat Leonard joining us. New York Daily News, covers the Giants. Covered the Rangers for a long time at Madison Square Garden, then made the switch from the play on the ice to the play on the gridiron. Tomorrow night, Eagles and Giants at Lincoln Financial Field. I just don't see the Eagles winning this game. I just don't. I take a look at both of these teams. The Giants are just a better team. And the Giants aren't this dominant team to me. They have a dominant defense, but their offense has serious concerns. The only way the Eagles have a chance in this game is if they force those turnovers. Turnovers have been the issue for the Giants, and we've seen games where even they turn over the football a lot and the defense bails them out. Just look at that Dallas game. Eli Manning was horrific. Really bad, brutal against the Cowboys, but that defense is so good. They suffocate the quarterback. They have really good players in the secondary. And I don't care if Jenkins doesn't go, because they still have enough guys in that secondary that are going to defend this anemic wide receiving core of the Eagles. So the only way the Eagles have a chance tomorrow, and I mean the only way, is if they force turnovers. And those turnovers occur in reasonable field position. If they do that, then you have a chance to win the game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I don't think it's going to be a 14-point game. I think it'll be close. Just the way that this defense for the Giants is clicking right now, I just don't see them losing the game. I don't. 6099199D200.